I'm Raul, and I'm here with a very special guest that I hope everyone finds interesting, Thiago Niemeyer, right? Hopefully I got that right. I'm trying my best. I'm kind of pronouncing it a little bit more in Spanish, but maybe you can correct that in the proper Portuguese, right?
Niemeyer.
Okay, so the reason why I have you here, and I think that you can provide like a really unique perspective, is that not only are you a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, you are also a historian by training and an anthropologist by training, and you have extensive, like not only interest but experience with various grappling arts.
Yes, yes. I've been training since I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 26, not 26 years, but since 94, and other grappling arts, judo and Luta Livre recently as well. Yeah. Some judo and some Luta Livre as well.
Okay, awesome. And so you've even you said you've even traveled to Europe to do this, right? Like, oh, you like to do judo as well?
Yeah, no, because I studied in the Netherlands during my PhD, so I would do judo there. Like I was training with the team from my campus, just to. But mostly, I had competition in mind, but I couldn't. I was just training just because I like grappling, and they had judo there, so I okay.
Okay, cool, cool. So one of the things that I'd like to kind of like ask you about is like you also had not only like this extensive kind of traditional like gi jujitsu experience, but like with your experience with the Luta Livre. I kind of like to see like kind of your thoughts about that because really a lot of times I'm getting more and more comments about it because a lot of people are saying how like, oh, this is like the Brazilian version of catch wrestling, but when I look at it, it doesn't necessarily seem like they're not wearing a gi, right? So that's like kind of like the main similarity, but there's no real like emphasis on pinning, right? So that's where I'd be like, yeah, like maybe kind of similar, but not necessarily exactly the same. So kind of like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think yeah, it's definitely. I've been watching the matches you put online on the
Mhm,
channel,
mhm,
and it's very different. It's more like submission grappling these days. Although I think that back in the day, especially one of the lineages used to be more like catch, but definitely if it doesn't without the pinning rule, it's just changes completely. There's some guard in Luta Livre, there's guard play. Although it has less importance than in Jiu-Jitsu, you do guard, and there's the idea of taking your back and strangling you. So
mhm.
it's definitely not catch wrestling. It's a well, a fight of its own, I think, because you have like neck cranks and cross faces, things you don't have in a lot. I was listening to a podcast, your podcast the other day. You talk about Jean LaBelle and hybrid styles, and I think it's kind of a hybrid style. Yeah, it definitely comes from. That's the consensus from people. Like the father of Luta Livre was a catch wrestler. Who was beating everyone, like the best fighter in Brazil, like during the 30s, and one of the biggest athletes in the country, Euclides Hatton. But then it changed. I think people are studying that a lot now. I think Robert Dresdale has an interest on it. Here in Brazil, like you had like jiu-jitsu and luta livre fighting and catch wrestling slash luta livre fighting against each other for many and many years, and eventually they developed their own style. A good example is I watched your video. That was the first video I watched was on the Americana because also was thinking about like people say that this doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't add up because I'm not being cocky or anything, but they would say, okay, I tap you and I tap you again. But if it was Bushesh, okay, if it was Bushesh, I can even like he can do whatever he wants. I'm not passing
Yeah.
his, but I found the video in Americana comes from American wrestlers. This they didn't have this in jiu-jitsu. I think a wrestler. I don't know. I might be wrong, but something like a wrestler came here and subbed the guy like Kimura was a Japanese judoka. So it's I think all styles are hybrid in a way. Catch wrestling seems to be like really like judo in a way, really concerned with um, like the traditional aspect of it, which is like it's so interesting. The pinning rule will never be able to do anything like it because if I can't like sometimes just hug you in the garden, rest for some seconds, my mind doesn't even work. It's fantastic. I watched this guy, Matt Tram. It's Matt Tram.
Yeah, Matt
Yeah, it's
Tran.
awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. It's non-stop. It's you think like real fast. I really liked it. Yeah, but it's definitely Luta Livre is something else because maybe they could compete under those rules. They would, I don't know what they would think. Maybe if it was like if you had a catch wrestling tournament here, maybe people could try to because adapt to those rules because they also compete in wrestling. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of them are also wrestlers and do MMA. So a lot of guys, for example, Darren Till comes from a Luta Livre background. The only grappling he knows, as far as I know, is
Hmm.
Luta Livre, and he does pretty well at the UFC. He was other guys like Jose Aldo is jiu-jitsu, but he, like Novo União, has had a lot of Luta Livre coaches. They always have a lot of, but yeah, definitely it's not catch wrestling. Like the catch wrestling you guys do there, is something else, yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad you kind of brought that up because that's the thing. So maybe like people, so like maybe if you had like this pure catch wrestler that went to Brazil, and then it's almost like he kind of got a lot of influence from what was going on with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu and stuff. So then you kind of have this impact. Or it kind of reminds me of. This might be a little too obscure, but kind of reminds me of researching. So I researched a lot of the history of China and some of the uh, like when the Italian missionaries from the Vatican went to China, then they spent a lot of time there, and then they became very like China-ized when they returned back to Rome and reported to the Pope, and kind of like even their philosophy was a little bit different from the Orthodox Christianity of the time. So maybe it could have been kind of a thing like that, where you have like a catch wrestler, maybe used to pinning, but then was in an environment and where there was no real pins, and so maybe that kind of faded over time.
Yes, exactly. And as far as I know, like for example, George Gracie, like the brother of Carlos and Helio and Helio,
Hmm.
he would compete in catch matches. He's because they still had catch matches like in the 40s and the 50s. Eventually, it became like here in Brazil, like the pro wrestling. And
Hmm.
for example, one of the choreographers of the first show, he just died from COVID, was a like real Luta Livre master, Roberto Leitão. He's
Oh.
died at the age of 87 or something. Yeah, he was a choreographer. He was like a of like the pro wrestling TV show, Heróis da Luta, and
Hmm.
his son went to the Olympics to do freestyle wrestling. So there's a lot of. It, I think Luta Livre here in Brazil and Jiu-Jitsu they influenced each other a lot because you're fighting those guys under like different rules like gi, no gi, and eventually, well, you learn techniques from them. You learn. There's this thing that people say, jiu-jitsu has no leg locks and stuff. It used to have a lot of leg locks, and some schools would like do great in tournaments because they would be good at leg locks. But then in the 80s, I think, or 90s, I kind of remember seeing people leg locking. I didn't have the eye for like crossing or doing it. It's just I remember in the 90s, but uh, well, that's it. The rule changes, and I think that now the growth of jiu-jitsu like makes like I think that the mondials in IBJJF is the greatest competition, definitely in jiu-jitsu. But it's not just that. The sports side is it's kind of a cliche to say like oh, there's also self-defense, but um, yeah. So it it has influences from all the fight. Like definitely jiu-jitsu and luta livre they influenced each other a lot. As I said with the Americana lock, it comes from catch. In judo, it's documented that some moves like sorry, the double leg takedown. I forgot the name.
Hmm.
Uh, udegarami, you grab the guy and throw. It came from the contact with the same thing you said with the guys from China. The contact with the Westerners made them uh, well do like the Westerners, like grab and throw or go for the double leg takedown, because I think originally it wasn't intended to have that. That's why it's forbidden now in competition.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
kind of what I heard too, where maybe they, in order to make sure that someone doesn't just go in and double leg everybody in judo competition, then
uh,
they just ban the grabbing the legs, right?
yeah, uh,
But in that way, doesn't
it
it kind
was.
of make it almost like a Greco-Roman, but with the gi? So then you can do some of these big throws.
Yes, exactly. That's the intention is like, and now the trips and like big throws. That's what they want. It's a ashiwaza, I think, and which is the tripping game and big throws, because they were having like a lot of like Russian, European, like would grab to your legs and try to score more points. It's not exactly like freestyle wrestling, because I think in judo, since now like it's all only wasari and nippon, like it's all almost perfect or perfect.
Hmm.
It's only big throws, so they have a very fast hip and they don't get that much of a clinch in it game. Although like Mongolian fighters, for example, they excel at clinch fighting because they're still like grabbing and throwing is still allowed. You just can't grab the legs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's why you see a lot of the Mongolians just dominating even like sumo wrestling too, where they can easily
Yeah.
if they're big enough, they can easily transfer to something like sumo or any kind of stand-up takedown type of wrestling.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. It's for me. I understand now from the changing rules. I was like always crazy. I did some judo in my life. I did not a lot of judo, but did some judo. But I wanted to be in the Olympics. So when I was a kid, I would see on TV like guys from Brazil getting medals, and I understand the way they changed the rules, but why? But I thought it was like a lot more fun. But in the United States, you have like a movement called it freestyle judo. I think it's advocating like this judo. I think it's a guy from Arizona or something. Judo, like where you can grab the legs, because normally people who lean towards this approach, they also do sambo, which has a lot to do. And I went to a judo, and yeah, and then when I was training in the Netherlands, I was telling everyone, oh, we should. They were like also taught that grabbing the legs. They used to do a lot of leg grabbing, and now it's bad. And I said, oh, I wish that this could be back. And I said, no, but there, this is what sambo competitions are for. If you want to play like that game, and kind of understood and agreed with, like preserving the art. If you want to grab legs and like submit, you go for sambo competition. A lot of guys cross train sambo and judo, especially in Europe. They do a lot of sambo.
No, okay, that kind of makes sense actually, even with catch wrestling, because a long time ago, like kind of as so catch wrestling kind of evolved in kind of some I'd say like in waves, like waves of immigration that went through northern England, and so these people who came from who migrated from like Central Europe, like the mainland Europe to northern England, they kind of brought different things with them, different like grappling with them. And then what it appears to have happened is that so catch wrestling, had maybe a little bit more kicks in it, like strike, like almost like kicking the shins or different types of things like that, and kind of a big double leg takedown. Always had like the pin there, but they seem to maybe perhaps along like hundreds of years ago allow some choke holds, maybe like a guillotine or something. But it seems as though like around like the mid 1800s, that became basically barred at that time, and then that remained through. And the kicks and all that were gone, right? But then that seemed to remain well through like the heyday of catch wrestling. But nowadays, you'll have some movements where people want to like maybe or just like allow chokes in competition. Catch Wrestling Alliance, we don't do that because all of the old timers that we know, none of them wanted that, and all actually a lot of them expressed that desire to me, like personally, like, oh, just leave it the way we understand catch wrestling to be. But it seems as though, like, kind of like the modern understanding of grappling, since chokes are kind of popular in MMA and all that, then people think it's strange to not allow chokes. But kind of like you were saying, and what we often say to other people that are like kind of that offer that criticism is that we often say like, well, you can do jujitsu and if you want to choke people, but we have like a lot of history with catch wrestling being a certain way, and even like I always like to mention one of the catch wrestling champions, Earl Caddick, right? He ended up training people for the U.S. military, and there was like the famous interview with him where he described all the like he said that he can tell who's a beginner at grappling because the beginners are always trying to choke people, and so it's like once you
Okay.
become more refined, then like you'll know different things to do besides just relying on chokes. So I think there's kind of like
Exactly.
that. Go ahead.
As you, it's interesting that you mentioned this point because I think it has a lot to do with if you allow chokes. Chokes are great, of course, and there's no problem with chokes, or neck cranks are also great, but you lose some knowledge because people who stop doing something, for example, your video on the Americana, like it's kind of a lost knowledge. People are not doing that because they're not being encouraged to do so from an early age. It would be a no-brainer. Like back in the day, I was like fat, like really fat when I started. I like to throw people in Americana from the side control, and this was a winning strategy from white belt to black belt. Well, of course, some guys had an incredible guard. It always existed, but well, you have to be careful against people who can Americana. In a lot of guys, especially fat ones in the at the top of the heavyweight division, they do it and they tap people out. Like sometimes guys are in the finals against uh, and some people they have small minds. They say it's because he's fat and he's. It's always like this. I remember watching like about catch wrestling. I remember I heard it about it on Pride, the Pride
Yeah.
fighting championships because and it was like, well, it's so interesting because for me, like people in at my jiu-jitsu were saying like, oh, this guy, for example, Josh Barnett can fight, and it was like it's so pure strength. He's trying to muscle his way, for example, through like truly technical real fighters. And it was no, but there's something more to it. It just can't. It doesn't work like this. Like we had a it was a bodybuilding gym, and we had my teacher still teaches there. On top, there was a dojo in the '90s. A lot of strong guys would try their luck in well fighting people because they wanted to prove something, and they would have. It's not about only being strong. And then along came Sakuraba as well, like and they all Sakuraba. I think people paid attention because he could tap anyone. He tapped he beat a lot of graces and doing something because yeah, I couldn't understand what he was doing. Catch wrestling is really unique because he doesn't pass guard or do guard. He just taps people with uh, flying like yeah. It's so catch wrestling. What is amazing is that if you keep the rules like now I understand judo from the same point of view like people would for example like the tripping game if you like with the rules that they had until like the Beijing Olympics in 2008 it was so hard to trip people because they would like be distant from you like if the guy's a great judoka like you try to grab the legs or you try a throw like that is not a perfect score and throw and or waste the time. So it's important that you keep those rules because people keep thinking to how to come up with solutions for these rules, which lead to like the classic. Because otherwise, people will not be doing neck cranks anymore. For example,
Yep.
hey, like people, I saw like yeah, Gary Tonnen could have tried a neck crank to neck crank the guy. Well, if it doesn't work, then you follow it up with punches and whatever. It's I think people are, especially in MMA, are too they're committing too much to this sports jiu-jitsu mindset, and it's awesome. It's very interesting. I have a lot of, but it's well, it's not like MMA. It's something else. It's not directly. You don't transfer it directly. I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because like especially with MMA, it's like you can be striking, but then you can also do neck cranks. But like you just mentioned, where it's like if the only thing you train is chokes, then when you're in the position to maybe try it, then that's kind of what you're gonna go for. But when it doesn't work, then it's like you're clueless on what to do. Like your brain's not computing, and sometimes people were trying to defend Tonin about like, oh well, the he's wearing MMA gloves, but it's like, well, chokes also happen in MMA. It's not
Yeah,
like
exactly.
no one can complete a choke. I mean, it's just I don't think that's like a valid excuse.
Perfect. It's exactly like now people know how to defend from the rear naked choke. So you have to break more angles to bring something new. Like even if you're choking someone, well, for example, let's say I can choke, but I can also like neck crank or do something like it. Then I would open space for a choke. You
Hmm.
know, if I'm also dangerous neck cranking people, and well, I think people sometimes they close. It's not that they close their minds. I don't know, but maybe it's because it's difficult to bring things together. Like, well, it's a challenge, but I think that people definitely. Well, some guys like Ben Askren was. He would do some interesting folk style stuff like bulldog choking people. I think it's. Sometimes I'm watching. I don't watch I, that much UFC those days, but sometimes I why and he could try like to bulldog choke, and sometimes it's an easy way to end up a fight. You finish the fight neck cranking a guy or doing, especially at the
Hmm.
heavier weights. And for example, like I see some guys like when I see people talking about heavyweights and I see they have their gi on, like some guys who are 120, 265 pounds, for example, and well, they shouldn't be exactly doing this. I don't think they did that much guard play. I think they could do like jujitsu and also like because it's interesting when you learn how to fight with the gi. It gives you a different perspective on how you hold people.
Hmm.
But for example, like if you're a heavyweight, then maybe catch wrestling. Yeah, if you start in catch wrestling and then cross train, maybe you could get more because it's a different mentality. And I think it's MMA right now. It's the well, first it doesn't favor ground game anymore, so it's almost a crime to be on the ground all the time, unless you do something to please people who are watching, which is not necessarily the mentality, which is great. Of course, it's prize fighting, but to like a guy like Damian Maya, he's not a crowd pleaser. For me, I love to watch him fighting, but it's the idea is not. But now, like, well, they give you $50,000 if you pull up an incredible submission, which makes sense. But at the same time, it's not for. You're not supposed to do that much grappling anymore. They like to see strikes, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's really moved to a striking type game where, yeah, they're going to be signing people who have a lot of knockouts on their record, and it's
yeah,
not necessarily favoring the grappler. Because yeah, a lot of people will, and it actually will. Even the ref will stand it up if the ref, in his opinion, doesn't necessarily see too much action on the ground. But it's like again that becomes subjective, right? It's like well, it all depends on if he likes it or not. Right? Yeah, but one of the
yeah,
things I kind of
exactly.
want to go ahead.
And yeah, was going to say that it really like it bothers me when you have side control. Like people have side control, and the referee says back on her feet, and it's like, oh my god, like you had side control. It's such a great position you can do. Like you can you Kimbo slice against Ryan Nelson. Ryan Nelson like, was like in side control and throwing like well because if the rules allow for knees on the head like on
Hmm.
Pride FC for example
Yeah.
on one then you can if you have people on side control you can throw knees. It's weird. They have they should. I really think they should work on improving their understand of the grappling, more not a more grappling arts in general that can come about in MMA competition. It's not just jiu-jitsu, although it's the one I love the most, but it's not just, it's a different meta game.
Yeah.
There's things you can do, and if you are not doing, then have you could have an edge by, for example, like the first time I went to Luta Livre, the Luta Livre school, like, well, they tapped me left and right with leg locks, and they are like have 1 year training or something. But once I learned how to do it with my legs, because no one's doing this against me in jiu-jitsu, then
Mhm.
I think people should pay more attention. And also, yeah, should pay more attention to this kind of things. Now they're bringing leg locks back, which is great. So I think maybe in the next few years you're going to see a lot of leg locks, but there's more, even more than leg locks, definitely. For example, neck cranks.
Yeah, exactly. Because even speaking about neck cranks too, like sometimes we're kind of even almost going back to that position where we talked about Gary Tonin, where it's like he was just kind of stuck thinking about trying to choke. You can also do neck cranks, and but say even if that doesn't work, you've kind of you can then even go for some shoulder locks. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can happen up there, but like in mainstream grappling, it's just not being taught because of that reliance on chokes. That's my opinion, at least. And
Yes, of
actually,
course.
yeah, go for it. Go
No, no,
for it.
no. No, I'm sorry.
No.
Please finish your sentence.
Well, I kind of wanted to add, I think that kind of brings me to the idea where your idea about kind of like this old school versus new school, because you mentioned that, how like leg locks were old, and then now we see them coming back. So, what are kind of your opinions on that with regards to like grappling that you've seen, where it's like sometimes the more kind of old school grappler kind of can dominate the sport jujitsu person?
Well, first of all, I was super happy to see that IBJJF is allowing for leg locks on their competitions. Like it's only brown and black, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
adults, no gi adults, which I think it's interesting. It's first I think it's interesting because it's not allowed for all ages, and I think it shouldn't be. Like kids shouldn't be doing leg locks on each other. It's only maybe for pros and or masters. If you're like doing something, oh, I'm doing this at 40 to 45, and then oh, you need four screws on your knee, it might not be interesting. But like if for the guys who want to be on top, I think it's great. I think that yeah, I would like to see and ADCC trials in Rio de Janeiro, which is one of the most difficult you can have because you have so many talented grapplers here, both in Jiu-Jitsu, Luta Livre, in this, as I said, like other Jiu-Jitsu lineages that well don't have that much media. Yeah, well, Luta Livre guy was finished second, and he fought me out in the finals, and he tried to leg lock in the end and lost some points. So I think leg locks are coming back, and I'm hopeful also that Luta Livre can also be recognized as well because they kept a lot of knowledge on leg locks and how to set up for all the kinds of leg locks, and also like I watched master classes, Luta Livre master classes. Guys, they are so mean.
Mm-hmm.
They in the good sense they teach you like how to to get out of almost every position. Like it's of course it's a master. He's showing he's so good at doing it that it looks like it works all the time, but it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that Luta Livre can also the guys can can do very well in competition because at no gi and being able to leg lock because mostly, for example, uh, yeah, and even catch guys can compete under this rule. It's some more, yeah, it's. I think it's going to like bring back uh, what you said. Like we're going to think about leg locks again because we don't think about it, we don't use it, we don't. For example, like where I do jujitsu, I don't even. Sometimes I do just because you left your foot here and but if I try a leg lock, sometimes I might be going overboard, and someone say, "Well, but I'm not doing this." Like you have to, which is safe, but at the same time, we're losing like the details on it. And I think like Danaher, for example, like he's training so much specifically leg locks and his system he created it is beating everyone that maybe he lost touch with the Americana lock, for example. It might be. I really believe that those techniques been there forever. The problem is not theirs. They work.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
You just
sometimes,
need the.
yeah, go ahead and finish your thought there.
No, no, that's it. I think that they
Uh,
work. It's just people have to put it in practice.
yeah, and that's the thing too. Say with leg locks, a lot of the times, I mean, we have it in catch wrestling, but a lot of the times, uh, for someone to even get your leg, a lot of times it's like then there's been kind of a failure with your wrestling, right? So because usually with wrestling we have kind of, almost like you can think of like a baby like crawling, right? So we have kind of that position that we're in, and so for someone to then take you out of that position and like be controlling your leg, then that shows that you've failed at maintaining that position. And so I think that's why sometimes I think that's why many times you can see uh, leg locks happening a lot in nogi, and you don't necessarily see them happening all the time in like our catch wrestling competitions. We do have some like people who can convert someone like convert a wrestler and able to get the leg from a wrestler and get them out of that kind of wrestling position. Like one of our guys, if you see Anthony Pachek, his some of his matches, he's able to get some leg locks. But yeah, that's the thing. I think that's why catch wrestling, even though we do have leg locks, you might not see it all the time. But then you can also see how maybe Danaher and the Death Squad were so successful because people aren't approaching grappling and especially nogi from a wrestling point of view, or even many wrestlers if they go into nogi, they start trying to do kind of like what everyone else is doing and not necessarily kind of keeping to the wrestling fundamentals, which I think can keep them out of a lot of leg locks.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think if you're a wrestler, I know that like in the states, like wrestling is super. You have wrestling everywhere. Like we have jujitsu here, and I don't understand why. Like if you've been like maybe for example like you are a college wrestler and then you sign up to a jiu-jitsu class, like why are you trying to do like for myself I understand I had to learn from scratch like the jiu-jitsu fundamentals, but if you already know how to apply top pressure and not letting people get your limbs, I yeah, sometimes I think some teachers are they can't deal like with the way it creates because now jiu-jitsu it's also like employing a lot of people, like a lot of friends of mine they teach abroad, so it's great, and there's a whole lifestyle thing that goes with jiu-jitsu. So it's if a wrestler can just like smash everyone else or like just then this would create an imbalance maybe again with other students. I know some guys who like for example I know that André Pederneiras like which was like Nova União's like Jose Aldo's Renan Barão coach, like head coach for a long time. I know he gives if you're like great if you can beat anyone then you get the belt. He doesn't like sandbagging at all, and I think this makes sense because for example, I would definitely give a brown belt to Brock Lesnar because otherwise he would make me look stupid all the time, and all like the other black belts would look stupid as well. And what he should do, like in my humble opinion, is to develop his own way of submitting people, not trying to like I'm Black because it's not his body. It's not he has different some different knowledge. He can, of course, he can improve. Like I know this happened with André Galvão gave a very fast like the brown belt to Satoshi Ishii, the Olympic champion, judo champion, Japanese, because he can tap everyone out. So it doesn't make sense to where like especially in a sport like jiu-jitsu where like you don't have this curriculum like in judo you have it. Well, you know this 22 different takedowns and you have to show at the examination. Like it's not only about how you fight, but how you learn and then take the knowledge. Especially a fight like jiu-jitsu, definitely. I understand people who do not do it and think that, but yeah, it's something like the same happens with the wrestlers. Some of them like they're definitely not white belts. Like they they're not clueless about. And people say, oh, but the wrestler, then you can triangle choke him and stuff. Yes, exactly. But maybe for a purple belt or a very good blue belt, otherwise he can do it wrong, and he was still like, yeah, smash you, because he has a lot more experience with grappling in general. Yeah,
Mhm.
he knows how to
Yeah.
grapple. It's very hard to grapple wrestlers.
I don't know. I think you brought up a really good point, a really interesting question for me because I kind of like so like I'll respect every art for however however they do things, right? And I kind of talk about like catch wrestling and different martial arts as kind of being like their own languages, and so things are said or done a certain way in each language and each culture. Um, but I think you bring up a good point where it's like, yeah, if someone is just smashing everybody, right? Maybe with regards to the jiu-jitsu ranking system, then maybe they could be, or they could move up the ranks faster than someone who goes into jiu-jitsu with no, without, as a complete beginner. But I do like in some of my time in different I mean, I don't know if it's an ego thing, but I spent some time at a really famous gi jiu-jitsu school here in LA, and it's like a lot of the coaches kind of had this idea where it's like everyone starts at a white belt and they gotta do whatever they're doing for a little while, and then even if you're smashing everybody, right, then you still gotta do whatever you gotta do it the way they do it, and
Yeah,
then
the way they do it.
that's when you move up the ranks, right?
Yeah, some schools are not like it. Some schools, they have different approaches to it. Like, um, yeah, for example, like from yeah, from my teacher who gave me the black belt. I trained with him white to purple, and then he was not teaching anymore. I trained with the tank and Tanquinho. Tanquinho won the ADCC.
Hmm.
A great, fantastic leper, all around monster. Like, and it was, yeah, I felt like I was like most of the time I like to kind of smash people in my own way and do things that this is not that technical. I couldn't understand. But then people eventually, I was doing everything like super different from people, and for a while I was thinking, oh my god, maybe I don't have talent for jiu-jitsu. I've been 5 hours not doing it. It's so many new positions. But in the end, it's how well you grapple. It's not exactly how you do it. And I think people are really concerned with how you do stuff. Oh, you have to be able to open your guard, and I don't think so. I don't. Well, some guys, like for example, there's a great fight between 2007 Mondials, the finals were between a guy, ultra heavyweight, a guy named Luis Felipe Teodoro, Big Mac, a fat guy, and Rafael Lovato Jr. And this is a very interesting fight because Lovato won after the fight was over. Well, the other guy like smashed. It was a judoka. Like he smashed him so much. He got an advantage for something, but it was well, a decision that has never been made. I think was really the other guy got really upset about it because I'm not saying that this happened for that reason, but a guy would win the Mondials like doing something that people say don't do it, like cooking your opponent from top position, apply pressure, apply pressure, apply pressure, apply pressure, until he can, even if he can jump to the one side to the other, it doesn't matter. Like you keep applying pressure. I think people are discouraged by to fight like this right now because there's this mentality of weak against strong, and it's for example, for some time in my life, I thought that I like to pass guard, but that's why I'm never gonna be elite because I'm not a guard guy. I love doing guard, but I like to pass. And then I see, oh, this doesn't make sense. The purpose of jiu-jitsu, in my point of view, it's like everyone should develop their own approach to how they're going to do grappling and learning by their mistakes and stuff. So I think sometimes, like, for example, a guy who's short and stocky, and you're forcing him into doing some kind of position that definitely doesn't work for him, but he's losing time. He could be training stuff that works for him. Like,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, some coaches they lose this perspective, and then you're either you're either like super good at doing it, and then you get your respect by being. And also, there's the culture, like for example, like well, this competition, gi competition teams that now train no gi as well. Or if you have a very plastic sweep or technical sweep, people like they go crazy and they love it, and everyone wants to please the crowd, the crowd. But this is just a way of looking at things. Yeah, I think it all depends as well. Like maybe if you want to be a competitor and that, but I don't think you should. And I don't think you should um, uh, let anything get in your way of learning that there's there are more things to be done. For example, like the 10 Planet guys I met in Suriname, I tapped 4 times to the guy. It was no gi, but for example, like that's what I say, like the rubber guard, it made me so confused because I was trying to posture, and then oh my god, I lost all the posture, and I'm not heavy anymore. And this is the fun and the magic of grappling. There can always be new techniques, and yeah, I think that well, bringing up too many rules and teaching like I think some guys and now there are many problems. For example, other thing that I see in some genes that it's that, for example, IBJJF has a recommended for each belt, and which is great to prevent people from getting. I think you need 4.5 years to get the black belt, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, oh my god, now if I have 1 year, I will pay like for the at the end of the year for the party, and you have to give me my brown belt or my degrees. And I think it creates. For example, it took me 4 years from blue to purple, because it was not something I was really kind of frustrated by that during various moments. I was winning a few medals. But I knew that like it is not. I do not have anything to do with this decision. It's a decision like it's my coach, my master. He says when I saw some guys, oh maybe I could be a purple belt as well. But now people, yeah, it became kind of it's interesting. It opened a lot of doors, but at the same time, it's kind of surfing or something. It's a lifestyle. It's something you want to the kids they see the fights on YouTube, like they see well the all the IBJJF greats, and right now you have like some great fighters, people who are great guard players, and they see the great guard players, and there's this thing of like being on bottom and being able to, you know, and I think this is a strong thing, like people, and a lot of, but in the end, like a lot of people end up thinking jiu-jitsu only as a guard thing, and as if passing guard is not as important, at least as doing guard. I don't know. It's all about the competition rules, and I see here in Rio de Janeiro, and then in the rest of Brazil. So I think there's a lot of old school masters. They have very strong opinions towards it. I know a lot of guys who are 6 degree, 7 degree. Uh, even no, not that I know that I'm friends with them, but for example, they gave the 6 degree to my teacher, and then would come like a guy who like was the first guy who to fight Marco, who was in a ninth degree black belt. They don't like it at all. That's what you said about catch wrestling rules. They are definitely not happy about the most of them. Like some of them are happy with it, but with the way things are taken in jiu-jitsu. They took away a lot of things. For example, in the 90s we had like palm strike fighting, and you understand like why you need to, for example, pay attention to self-defense when someone can slap you in the face. Then it's really like bulldog choke and take down. It's more important than like, and you can see it in front of anyone if you there's slaps involved, like boom, you can slap someone. This is, and you have to deal with the fact that it messes your psychological aspect as well. And oh, you get slapped, it's so humiliating, but you have to. And I think that it's great that jiu-jitsu is spread so much, but I think there's more to it, and people should listen more to old timers like they do in catch wrestling. It's not that what they say is a law or a rule. Definitely, it wouldn't be nice with the yin and yang thing. You got to have the youth energy, but yeah, but the wisdom of guys who are like who've been doing this for 50 should be more appreciated. Maybe it can be
Yeah.
unfair. I'm being unfair. I don't know, but that's what I see.
No, no, I think you're right because a lot of times, even in the olden days, right? A lot of times there was less concern for safety too, so or even it could have been like a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah, yeah.
self-defense oriented, right? So unlike today, and I think there are really a lot of good protections for athletes nowadays, which I'm all for that. You know, like making sure people get or people don't get needlessly injured, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, well, the one thing with regards to listening to the old timers in catch wrestling, I wish some people would listen a little bit more to some of the old timers, like a lot of like all of them that I know, and I've known several that all of them wish to keep the no choking rule as part of it. But then we have some movements where it's like people they try to take they take yeah, they basically want to apply their wishes or their way of trying to popularize catch wrestling to make it fit a modern grappling understanding. So they're not they're not trying to keep to what the old timers are saying. But so that'd be my idea about, or that's kind of what you made me think of. But overall, I mean, even with regards to the like combat, a lot of times the old timers they had a really more kind of combat oriented point of view with regards to even competition, right?
Mhm. Exactly, exactly, and that's what you said. Like we gotta. It's interesting if we've had. Yeah, I'm of course all in for protecting people. I don't think that, for example, like palm strikes would be like nowadays. It sounds a little bit out of place. But for example, like it's something that comes from the beginning of the discipline. So you have to keep in mind that some exactly what you said, and also like uh, yeah, we gotta have uh, people like not getting hurt. We need to keep this in mind because like pretty bad accidents happen back in the day, like and people are preventing it. But yeah, I think people should listen more to the old timers. And I think the old timers, I don't think, I do not think that they have a formed opinion on that. But the ones I talk to, they don't care much about no gi first. They do not really, they don't do it, or they think that okay, you take your gi top, or you can go to a different gym. That there's no problem now there. They should. It's not that you need to do what they say, but you need to examine what they're saying because they lived in a time where you were not even born and they were doing this. They talked to people, they met people and measure. And well, it's not if what they've done it's right or wrong. I don't think it's if what they say is right or wrong. It's not that the point, but it's their opinion is important to orient, like yeah, to guide you towards like keeping, for example, like jujitsu. Well, how can it still be for so much time? I know that people, I'm not a purist because people have been doing this question for, when I was started jiu-jitsu, I remembered some guys would say, oh, it's not like in the old days, now like the kids just want to do this and that. And of course, I'm not, yeah, I would definitely not say like, oh, the kids doesn't, no, it's perfect. It's evolving. But we can't, um, we we should, like for example, lose touch with the self-defense aspect. And sometimes people teach it in such a stiff way, like it feels like okay, you grab your butter. It's never going to work. But maybe if you're able to create scenarios in which people have to actually defend themselves, and yeah, uh, it's how you say it. A lot of people they want to kind of like break free from the old timers. For them, it's and I think it's more about like bringing your new ideas because I think uh, our as younger people, like our vitality is important than keeping the flame lit. But at the same time, we can't do whatever we want to do. It's not. And there's also like things in jiu-jitsu, like for example, like IBJJF, like it's Carlos Gracie, which I have huge respect for because he can like bring together like huge competitions, and a lot of people are making a living out of jiu-jitsu now, which is great. But it's one way of understanding it. You see, ADCC, well, ADCC came along and it became something else completely. Like overnight, people were like started doing no gi. I remember like the first time I was like seriously doing no gi. I was saying, oh my god, I gassed out so much, and I was being trialed all the time because it's just something else. And I think it's great that we do no gi, but keep in mind that like rules are there's two things. There's the rules, and which includes like the place in which you fight, like the format. For example, you train Sanda. Sanda, you have this rule, and you can throw the guy off. Uh, if it's karate, then you're thinking you are like in an open space. Like, well, you have like think competition is a setting, and you should of course adapt to the setting in which you're competing. And this new athletes, these guys have a large ability to the top ones to adapt to any kind of scenario. I'm sure, but we should like from day one understand that first competition is not for everyone. Like, yeah, everyone should be encouraged. Like judo, you're really encouraged to compete. And for me, it was very important because I was super afraid of competing, and I'm not the greatest competitor maybe, but I became like a reasonable competitor by competing like every week in judo. And now I got there, and oh, the guy threw me, and it's a rebound, and then I throw the guy, and in the end, you see like you win, you lose. It's part of life. It's just, but at the same time, we can lose touch with because there's so much knowledge. Like in Rio de Janeiro alone, like, and I'm sure. Well, you have like guys who you watch to their seminars. It's I know they're not world champions. They're not winning maybe the IBJJF Mondials by following what they say, but I mean the subtext of what they're showing you is that this kind of thing you can do. I saw videos of Billy Robinson, like when I first got interested in catch wrestling, and he would like even with the crane and stuff, he would be able to grab someone, and yeah, it's something. There's a mastery to it that other people don't have. Even it's a matter of time. That's why like you have the ranks, and some guys yeah are high have higher ranks in the black belt. I think we should pay attention to it. Not to become something maybe like judo is, in which Kodokan dictates the rules, but to become something in which like a lot of people can, like the old timers and the guys who are teaching now can participate and be open about how they're going to. Because right now maybe you have a generation of black belts who really think they're being sincere in thinking that Americana doesn't work and neck cranks are just doing grosseria, as we said, which is like muscling people around, and which is, well, for example, I have one of my best friends as a purple belt. I have a hard time. Sometimes we roll, uh, but I he has to understand that. For example, I try to show him that. Oh, okay, now I bulldog choke you. Oh my God, it's up. Understand that those things might be involved. If you want to be a good grappler, you can like do your guard game, which is classic and nice and super effective. I wish I had such a great guard and could be and play bottom all the time. But at the same time, you need to be ready for and eventually changing the way you do guard because some people can well tap you by doing top pressure, for example. It's necessary. It's kind of the balance. I remember there's a one thing in jiu-jitsu called a masapão. Like you grab the gi like here from top guard, like especially real big guys do it. And it's important to have some people to have people doing this. To if you want to learn guard, a lot of things I learned from the guard it came from being tapped out from top pressure and doing this because then I would. Uh, then if you say, "Oh no, I'm going to armbar him from guard," but it doesn't necessarily work this way. You have to learn how to find your way around it, and I think we need to encourage people to more like be themselves. Like if you're a wrestler, then well, eventually people are going to. It's people have to understand. I think there's too much ego involved these days. It always has been, but I think now the teachers it's more like they're friends with the students, which is also great. Um, but now I think there is this ego thing that people don't want to tap if the other guy is a lower ranking and they don't. It's just too much ego, and the decisions, and they want to be don't want to be tapped out. And if you eventually tap them out, it's something that, and they instead people should be learning from
Yeah.
it. But maybe only maturity brings this understanding of grappling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I try to tell like my students in the gym, it's like don't worry about tapping out. It's actually for your safety, and
Yeah.
it's like let's experiment in the gym so that
Yeah.
when you're out in competition, you can win, or at least you know, those are things like kind of don't worry about the ego so much and experiment and have fun and like make mistakes here, right? So you don't make mistakes out
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. That's and all the guys I thought were like super talented that I met along my jiu-jitsu career, let's say, me doing jiu-jitsu, they were the guys who didn't care about tapping out. There's a guy like, for example, I remember Tanquinho. I think I can say that. Like he's a ADCC champion, IBJJF world champion. He's a
Mhm.
monster. He taps everyone left and right. It doesn't matter. He's great. And I remember being a purple belt, and we had a competition um, team like around lunch break, and I went there with my gi and like yeah we were. I would go there and train with with him and other great black belts, Formiga and other very famous guys like João Gabriel Rocha, who beat Bochecha. And I was like some guy who tapped me like 2 or 3 times, and I was really mad. Now I understand it. And he said he mentioned there's a story of him. Oh, when I got my black belt, I went to visit like the other guys who's a great black belt as well, Jim, and he tapped me 7 times, and I said, "Oh, like how can you even survive this?" But now being older, I understand that. Well, his mindset is not that I don't care. Like, you gave me a lot of chances to understand better the game, and to every time you beat me you're teaching me something. And I don't know, that's the way I started approaching fight more as grappling more like this, like when I was at like a brown belt and was, oh, I don't want to be a shitty black belt. I'm sorry for the
No problem.
cursing. Yeah, so it's a, I don't want to be a bad black belt. uh Oh my God, people! Yeah, and I said, okay, so I just don't care anymore. Like because I was flirting with this idea of not caring for a long time, but you have all the pressure around you, and then people after training they would say, "Oh my God, the guy tapped you like 3 times." Yeah, now I don't care anymore. I just care about learning because it's just so much fun. Like grappling is like the, well, it's for people who like it. I think it's, yeah, it's a way to get into a flow state. You just just being yourself, like doing it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's kind of one thing you kind of made me think about, where it's like there've been a few black belts that I've rolled with, and like you put the timer on, so maybe we only have like 5 minutes, right, to roll, and then but sometimes then they put, especially because so then against me, then they're gonna use all their defense that they have, like they're gonna use all their best like guard skills against me, but then it's like then they never even get a chance to even attempt a submission, right? Because it's like all they're doing is kind of like pushing me away the whole time, and it's like then that kind of blocks the learning in a way, right? It's like, why don't you let me in more? Because then we only have a certain amount, we only have 5 short minutes, right? Because there have been some guys that I really enjoy rolling with, but it's like almost like then, because like the way I'll approach it then is like, well, I'm gonna let this guy tire himself out a little bit, and then I'll even tell him, why don't we roll a few rounds then? Because if
Mhm.
they're spending all their time on defense in the beginning, then I'll wait for them to get tired. So that's kind of like one of the things you made me think about in that situation, where it's like, go ahead and you make your mistakes, try something, allow something to happen, because if it's in the gym, who cares? It's not like a real match.
Exactly, exactly, and yeah, exactly. And also like you mentioned this, it's interesting, but maybe people should appreciate. A lot of my friends who are teaching and competed a lot, and they have like big, won big tournaments. It was always good for them. Like they have great guards to fight. For example, against me, I can apply a lot of pressure, and so it's good because if it's maybe, let's say it's an IBJJF, now you have like, it's impressive. Like if for adult division, you have 4 or 5 fights like every tournament. So if some guy is good like at this and he completely breaks you, and yeah, you should actually they should actually use this experience. For example, if they want to evade your pressure, so they should, yeah, they it's a, might be a good thing for them if they keep in mind, okay, so I'm going to train my defenses to be even more defensive, because I think that's the point. In a way, jiu-jitsu is about defense. Fight. You see a Rice Gracie, he was super defensive against Dan Severn, for example. Let's say like cooking your opponent, waiting for the best moment. I think 10th Planet approaches this really well. Like it's cooking. You put someone in the rubber guard. It's super. It's something. It's really annoying because it's well, I know that now there's a lot of ways to pass rubber guard, but if there's a tight rubber guard, then there's not much you can do, and it's about making, yeah, it's about creating this feeling that you're um yeah, that to irritate you, like, because a lot of people, they can't stand the fact that they can't pass the guard or something. It's, yeah, I think, yeah, I think exactly that there's a lot of things that might be discouraging for someone who's starting, especially these days in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and already have a grappling a grappling background. If I was a wrestler, I would never put a gi in my life. Never. If it was like they had the Olympics held here in Rio, in Rio, and I went to see like the wrestling live, and it's something that if I could do things like this, like why put a gi? Like the guys are animals, they are beasts. Uh, I, but I would learn like how to tap people out maybe, and it's great. The bottom game, but there's no way you for example, but then you don't know the guard and stuff. You can play bottom, but in the end, it doesn't matter because, well, if people can, there's like, if people can put you on your back, then, well, you can like improve your top game, because if you're elite wrestler, people can put you on your back, and it's I don't see much point as like maybe doing a technical stand up. This is other thing that in I don't like to say old school because there's always older school, but you would focus a lot on technical stand ups, and it's because you. I think a lot of times I would like do a technical stand up if I wasn't doing very well in guard. Um, Perform a technical stand up and then try to throw. I think they should focus on those things as well. Like because there's the problem, we are on our knees, so it brings a big level of artificiality to the game.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what you're going to. That's why a lot of people are sitting in front of you, because, well, that's how you can. It makes all the sense, because this is how you can. Um, well, how you can train yourself to a very high level, training on your knees. Maybe if you started on your feet, I don't know how to solve this. A lot of friends of mine who are teaching, and I say, oh, and well, as you know, because you're a coach, in practice, this is much harder than it sounds. There's a lot of things around. Um, and also you have competitions, and right now they allow you to. I think they're changing this rule as well, but I don't know. Something's got to make up for the fact that you're on your knees. You're only training. There's a great master here in Hio. He says that, yeah, he learned from I think Rickson and forget the other guy who his cousin who died, and forgot his name, Rose Gracie, who's considered to be like the best of all time, even better than Rickson. He says that the ground is like number five. They would train. If you see the Gracies training in the '60s, they would throw like taekwondo kicks, and it's more like about how you approach and you go to the ground. I know that it's like one is distance, and then two, I don't know, maybe three is clinch, four is taking down, and five is submitting. So people only do like the four and five nowadays.
Mm.
So we lost a lot of a lot of what jiu-jitsu is supposed to be, and it's you see guys like Roger Gracie, they're good in all aspects of jiu-jitsu. He's not the best judo player, but he can take you down. He knows jiu-jitsu from one to five. So a lot of things now, yeah, the way we are training, especially for safety, it encourages guard play. It's all about guard play, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and it's all about winning as well. And when you go for competitions, it's all about winning. So, well, your idea might be interesting, but your teacher will say, okay, it's easier if you pull guard and you want to win, right? And it's the rules, like it's not that, yeah, that they favor like, well, being on bottom all the time or avoiding. And also, like, maybe if you have like a goal, I understand, like if your goal is like, I'm going to be like champion. Yeah, it takes, you have to put a lot of time on takedowns and some other techniques that might not be that useful in competitions, and now they have like prizes and stuff. I don't know. But still, like, I see a lot of guys who are like, because now, for example, like here where I live in Rio, like you have so many good fighters in the area. Like I see a lot of those new kids. They're great at what they do. They're very good. They can sweep you, pass your guard. Because now people are, they are much better athletes than ever. Uh, I think it has to come definitely from well, with the IBJJF, because there's those things. There's this as well. Like for example, to teach abroad, you gotta have an IBJJF certificate, which is great because it. Okay, you're not learning at a McDojo. It's not something, someone who's trying to fool you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's only IBJJF rules. It's all that matters. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of guys, like for example, in uh, a lot of guys who are red belts, they teach here in Rio for like 5, 6 people. They charge a fortune. It's like 5, 6 people. He teaches like standing and everything. More, but it's mostly for someone who's looking for a more complete understanding of the art, because a lot of people, they just want to have fun, and yeah, which is great. Actually, it's great, but they don't care. Okay, throws don't work, so I'm going to. And I particularly think that right now, what people like is to see the smaller guy doing like betting bolo people and get in the
Hmm.
back. And jiu-jitsu has this thing. A lot of, I was like a stocky, chubby guy when I was younger, but I remember most of my friends were really thin, and they watched like for Rice Gracie on the UFC, and weak beats the strong. This is their motivation. They like the guard because, and the practical applications in their mind, they would do this. Oh, if someone takes me down, and I can submit him off my back.
Yeah, yeah. I think that like the first UFC was one of the best marketing schemes for jujitsu like ever. Like that was like such a brilliant
Yeah, yeah,
idea. um,
yeah. Yeah, they've been doing this. Like the Gracies have been doing. I think it also has to do with the fact, like, the Gracie family. These guys are super smart and they can fight. And they've been doing this in Brazil maybe for 50, 60 years, challenging people from. That's, for example, in '91 you had, in the '80s Luta Livre was on fire, and the Gracies were mostly teaching privates. They had this method of teaching privates, and they're starting to the word on the streets was that Luta Livre was beating Jiu-Jitsu every time, and so they made a BJJ against Luta Livre, 3 fights. And Luta Livre Jiu-Jitsu back in the day had a better understanding. The Gracies always had an understanding of how to prepare themselves and do yoga and eat right, and what the competition involves, like the, and yeah, the exact, and they made, well, they, for example, Royce was already familiar with the rules when he fought. The other guys, they didn't have that idea of, yeah, exactly,
mhm.
of what they always did this. In 1984, I think they had something against Muay Thai and Luta Livre. In 1984, it was 1-1 and one draw. But then in '91 you had three, Jiu-Jitsu 3, Luta Livre 0. It was Fabio Gurgel, Murilo Bustamante, who was the UFC champ later on, and I don't remember who was, Valide Ismail, and they beat the three Luta Livre guys who were also, some of them are legends, and it's kind of, I feel bad because people, some, there's some legends in Luta Livre that people don't know, or know because they fought a Gracie. yeah, the Gracies are smart, and they understood how to showcase jiu-jitsu to the world. They
Hmm.
understood. I think the most impressive fight in the first one is against Ken Shamrock. I think because yeah, he didn't think that Royce could use the gi to choke him out.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Now it's a real famous video, right? I think they even used it. They used to use it. I think in the beginning of UFCs, where that's kind of what this kind of like this little intro that they made, and that was one of the little clips, I believe that they.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, and also
Go ahead.
I would couple this with the fact that in Japan, in USA, you had a lot of wrestlers and boxers and then BJJ fighters, but in Japan, you had a lot of catch wrestlers. Maybe I was watching Pride. I think I assume that a lot of guys are catch wrestlers. They have because I know they do pro wrestling as well. So it's you had like a larger talent pool of catch wrestlers in Japan and American. It's and yeah, it kind of catch wrestling didn't have that many representatives. I think in but I heard that I don't know if you can confirm this, but that Dan Severn has something to do with catch wrestling. Is it true?
Um, Less than he makes out. All right, that's the thing. Yeah, he's definitely much more a regular wrestler. I know people will probably be mad at me for that, but it's pretty easy to see when if you follow him enough. Right? But so I think actually I would like for you to mention that you're also in a band. I'd like people to know like the name of the band and where they
Ah,
can find out about your band.
okay. My band is called Darvin, Garvin. You should definitely look up on it. Look up to it on Spotify or there's a lot of videos on YouTube. We've been playing for like 20 years or so. We've been in major labels, and now we're back in a big label. Look, try Darwin on Spotify where there's a lot of listeners and a lot of new songs. We're releasing songs every month. Next song we release January 8th. It's a punk rock band, and there's also Instagram at Darwin official.
Hmm.
DARVIN official like official.
Hmm.
Well, from it's a punk rock band. For more information.
Oh, okay, great, great. Yeah, I want to make sure that that gets out there too, because we've been talking over an hour, so I really enjoy all the stuff that we talked about, but maybe we can save it for another episode.
Okay, okay, definitely.
Cool. All right. Well, is there any other way people can like find out about you? I think you also have the Darwin YouTube channel, right? How about any
Yes,
Instagram
yes.
for you personally? Is there any way people can reach out to you personally?
Well, I have my Instagram, which is Thiago Thiago Darvin Tarvin, and well, you can talk to me over there. People can message me, and well, I really like this grappling subject, so that's how you find me.
Okay, great, great. All right. Well, thanks for
Oh,
coming on. What are you gonna
th-
say?
yeah. Before we finish, like just to mention, like we lost two people in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community in my area this week due to COVID. So I would just like to express my feelings towards these guys. Victor Sofia, two black belts, 34 years old, and another guy who was teaching and so fighters, 60 years old, 6 degree black belt. They had COVID, and it's really serious. And Brazilian government is not taking it seriously at all. Like it's almost 1,000 people dying every day, and
Mm.
it's super scary. So don't hold. Don't do grappling just now. Like that's okay. You can wait a little. If it's not safe, just if it's a red alert in your city, I don't care. Just stay home.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that too, because like in the United States, I think people don't realize that even young people are dying, but also the ones that survive, a lot of them are like even athletes are struggling to get back to like fighting shape. So it's like just hold off because like what even we talked about ADCC, they postponed, right? So it's like these big tournaments, they're waiting. So hold off a little bit, continue doing your cardio or your yoga and all that, but don't spread the disease. Let's get
Yeah,
this past.
exactly.
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Okay, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Thank you. We'll chat again.